Let's do a quick challenge. The challenge is to find out how many vowels are there in a given sentence. So what we have to do is take a sentence from the user and count the number of vowels. Okay, how do we do that? Well, we have a sentence, right? So we can use the input function, input, enter sentence, and we take that into a sentence. Sentence equals input. Now, what are the vowels in the English language? Vowels equals A, E, I, O, U, right? So where do we put them? We put them in a list. So we know how to create an empty list. An empty list is like this. But we know what the vowels are in advance. So we don't need to create an empty list and append them. We can just initialize the list like this. A, the first letter, comma, E, I, O, U, right? So this is how you initialize a list. So this is called list initialization. All right. Now we got to iterate over this sentence. So sentence is essentially a string, right? Now this string can be broken down into a list because we want to iterate over each of the elements in the sentence, right? So for letter in list of sentence. So essentially we are converting this sentence to a list, right? So this is where we are converting a string to a list. Just like the way we have converted string to numbers, string to floats, or vice versa, here we are converting a string to a list. Now, after we do that, what happens? Essentially, it becomes an iterable, a sequence of elements. So we can apply the for loop. For letter in this list. Okay, now what happens? Say the user has entered something like Ajay Tech, AJAYTECH, right? Now the first letter in this for loop will be A. Now what we want to do is find out if this element is there in this list. If yes, it's a vowel. If not, then it's not. Right? So how do you do that? How do you find out if an element is there in a list or not? In order to do that, we use the in keyword. It's a standard Python keyword. So we say if letter in vowels, then count equals count plus 1. So count is a variable that we declare here to start with 0. So what's happening here? We are using the in keyword to verify if an element is there in a list or not. In checks if an element is in a list or not. If it is there, of course, you increase the count. So this is how this challenge can be done. So you can actually code this in the system. Okay, so we initialize the count to 0, count equals 0, and then we say sentence equals input of enter sentence, and we say some text. We also need to create this list of vowels equals, here we are initializing the list, initializing it to A, E, A, E, I, O, U. Then we are converting the sentence to a list. Basically the string to a list. Sentence equals list of sentence. Now look at the way the sentence is structured. Earlier, if you were to print this sentence, it would be printed like a string. Now that we have converted that to a list, it gets printed like a list with each of the individual element in that sentence, the individual alphabets, being a separate element in the list. Okay, now you can iterate over this sentence. For letter in sentence, if, so this is the final learning, if letter in vowels, so this finds out if a particular element is available in a list or not. If letter in vowels, count plus 1. Done. Enter count, you should be able to get the total number of vowels. I think that's 3. A is the first one, the second A, second vowel, and E, the third vowel. Right? So we have learned 3 things here. How to initialize a list with some elements, how to convert a string to a list, and finally find out how to search if an element exists in a list or not. That's it. 3 learnings from this challenge.